Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our 12th annual State of the Reserve. We are excited that you have joined us this morning, and we are going to kick off this morning's presentations with two keynote presentations. And our first is from Dr. Mark Rains, who's the Chief Science Officer with the Florida Department of Environmental Protection.
Well, thank you, Caitlin, and thank you all for the invitation to join you this morning. I'm just back in the office after having been gone for a while, and I was telling Caitlin before we started, I'm booked back to back until 7:45 tonight. I don't even get a chance to eat. So I'm not going to be able to join you guys for the rest of the day, but I will certainly look forward to my next visit out personally to GTM NER and hopefully a better schedule to join you guys next year. So I have so if you're unaware, so the Chief Science Officer position was created by Governor DeSantis in January 2019. I provide leadership for the Office of Environmental Accountability and Transparency, also created by the same executive order. And we're charged with ensuring that sound science underlies policy and practice in the state. And I have a pretty succinct message to deliver you guys, but to get there, I have to tell sort of a shaggy dog story of why I'm so fond of the NERS, because the system has played a really important role in my own career. In addition to being Chief Science Officer, I'm also a professor of geology at the University of South Florida and have been since 2003. And early on in my career, I think it was 2005, through one of those complex web of alliances, I was invited to participate in a study at Kachemak Bay NER, KB NER. And that project has been consistently renewed and transformed many times over, all the way to today. We just published a paper on it last month. And I have two graduate students working on it, including a Margaret A. Davidson Fellow through NOAA and two undergraduate students working on it through the Hollings Scholar Program. And we're going there again this summer. You know, what has been so enriching about that is the same thing that I think is true of all the NERs. It's a place, it's got facilities, it's got fantastic people, and it's got great connections to the stakeholder community. And so it's a place I've been able to return to year after year after year. Now, sometimes we go there with, tons of money. We've gotten some of the NOAA Science Collaborative grants and had $500,000 to do studies some years. Some years we've got hardly anything at all, but because we've got that relationship, because they're the facilities and the stakeholders, even on just a couple of nickels and a cup of coffee, we're able to do great science. And so over the years, we've published, dozens of papers, cited thousands of times. We've trained, at least a dozen different graduate students, a lot of them who've gone on to work in public service science. Some who you may know, Jason Bellino, for example, from the U.S. Geological Survey, who's sort of one of their lead modelers and hydroclimatic modelers in the southeastern United States. He started as a master's student at KB NER back in 2007, working with me. Mike Callahan, who was my PhD student, who used to say anywhere but Florida when he would talk about his careers. He ended up getting his PhD in Alaska and landing a job. He's now the head of the Office of Columbia River in the Department of Ecology in the state of Washington, and many more. And so when I took this position, and I've only been in it since April of last year, one of the first things I did was start looking into the NERs and the APs here in the state of Florida. And Alex Reed has been great in helping me coordinate visits. And I've visited all the NERs and everybody's been great. I've been to GTM now, I think 2 or 3 times. I was just there a few weeks ago. And so that gives you the context. Like I, in my personal life, I have found NERs, or my professional life as well, have found NERs to be exceedingly useful places to center science. And to back to my charge, right, as CSO, I'm charged with ensuring sound science underlies policy and practice. But as I look around the DEP, so much of what we do is compliance-based. or status and trends based. And we don't do nearly enough good science to help us understand the challenges we're facing and to understand the appropriate solutions we ought to apply to them. And so I see the NERS and the APs as sort of unique opportunities. They're places where we can, outside the compliance domain, we can do good science. You've got great stakeholder engagement, so we can engage stakeholders in that science and in that helping to underlie local decision making. And so I am, as everybody knows, in their leadership, I have been very adamant about trying to find ways to direct resources to the NERS, most especially human resources. Like I would like to see more engagement of the scientific community through a program kind of like the Margaret A. Davidson Fellow Program, where the state supports scholars from our state universities who could come and work at the NERS alongside your staff. And do like my students did, which is they drug me along with them, right? And so I wouldn't have been there for 15, 20 years at KB NER all by myself. I'm up there because of the students and the student opportunities. Like I said, I'll go up there with 2 nickels and a cup of coffee if the NER can support my student needs. Provide them with some housing, provide them with the lab facilities, provide them with some of the field facilities, provide them with access to the field sites and stakeholders. That alone is gold to me as a researcher, because it provides the opportunities for my students to grow through their degrees and launch off into their careers. Again, many have been in public service. So I know it's not a new message to the leadership there at GTM NER, but I'm here to say it again. I really look forward to continuing to work with you guys to find ways to better connect the NERS to the resources I think you deserve in order to provide the kind of scientific leadership that I think you're well poised to provide. And I will stop there and turn it back to you, Caitlin.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rains, and we hope that we get to see you here at the Reserve again soon. I know that the High Kite was definitely an exciting piece of new equipment that everyone is very interested in. So thank you so much for joining us this morning, Dr. Rains. We appreciate it. Our second keynote this morning is Heidi Stiller. Heidi is the South Regional Director for NOAA's National Ocean Service and Office for Coastal Management. Welcome, Heidi.
Thanks, Caitlin. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great. Well, good morning, everyone. It is a real pleasure to be joining today, and I appreciate the opportunity to help kick off this event that is going to share some of the amazing research being done in and around GTM. Like Dr. Rains, I'm a huge fan of the research reserves, and the Florida NERVs do have a special place in my heart because I am based here in Florida. I'm down in St. Pete. I wanted to provide some background about the National Estuarine Research Reserve National System today. As you may or may not know, GTM is one of 30 research reserves around the country. And the system just added its most recent reserve, bringing that total to 30, which is a new reserve in the state of Connecticut. So we're very excited to be expanding and growing the system. The reserves were established to do a few things. First, they provide protection for estuarine ecosystems. Second is that they provide opportunities for environmental education. And then third, they provide vital platforms for research, as you'll hear about today. And then sort of an overarching piece is that the reserves really create important connections between science and coastal resource management. The Research Reserve System is a national partnership between NOAA and coastal states. And so my agency, NOAA, provides funding and guidance, and then state agencies, or in some cases universities, provide additional funds and that on-the-ground management of the reserves. Each reserve provides benefits to their home communities and home states, but they also provide national value in a number of ways. There are several nationwide efforts that the reserves participate in. And one big one that I know you'll hear about today is the system-wide monitoring program, which is affectionately known as SWAMP. And SWAMP provides long-term data on everything from water quality, weather, biological communities, habitat, to land use and land cover. And the standardized data collection protocols allow the delivery of near real-time data from each of the reserve sites. And those data are uniform, consistent, reliable, and long-term. Anyone can access the data through the centralized data management office. And those data serve as the backbone for many research projects, both those led by reserves and by outside partners. They support national, regional, and local level assessments of how our coastal natural resources are doing. You'll likely hear about SWAMP several times during the talks today. In addition, almost all the reserves, and including GTM, have started a new effort to monitor the effects of sea level rise and inundation on our coastal habitats. And this effort is really important because it gives us a baseline for gauging the impacts of climate change and how these impacts differ across our states and regions. Another system-wide effort, and this is something that Dr. Rains mentioned, is the Near Science Collaborative. This program provides competitive funding opportunities for reserves to partner with each other and with academic institutions to further their research efforts. GTM is an active participant in the collaborative. A new initiative, which Dr. Rains also mentioned, that we're really proud to have launched, is that Margaret Davidson Fellowship. And this program provides graduate level project experience to the next generation of coastal scientists and managers. So we're really excited that the reserves, including GTM, are hosting their first cohort of fellows this year. Another important piece of the reserve effort is the Coastal Training Program. And this program connects local decision makers and scientists, and it helps those decision makers understand the science and apply it in their decision making and in policies that they're setting. The education program is something that I mentioned at the top is one of the big goals of the system. But that education program not only provides curriculum materials, but it also gives students of all ages the opportunity to experience estuarine habitats and to do some science themselves. Reserves education staff also work with teachers and provide them with hands-on training through the Teachers on the Estuary program. The Reserves education programming really helps empower and inspire students to understand and protect their local estuaries. And then finally, reserves also foster environmental stewardship by demonstrating good stewardship. The reserves work to protect and restore habitats and species, but they also provide access and recreation opportunities. I'm sure that many of you on the line today have had the opportunity to explore GTM's amazing trails, but if you haven't, I definitely recommend checking them out. Turning specifically to GTM, GTM is one of 3 reserves in the state of Florida, and each of those reserves represents a unique ecosystem, and they focus on the unique challenges faced by the communities within which they are embedded. GTM is a real leader in water quality issues and on understanding and planning for the effects of climate change. Water quality monitoring efforts at the reserve have helped establish statewide studies to identify issues in aquatic reserves and other sensitive ecosystems. GTM is also leading the way in Northeast Florida to understand and improve oyster habitat, and very recently on exploring how drones can be used for monitoring habitats. The reserve also really stands out for efforts to increase the cultural diversity in education program attendance and to improve access to programs and opportunities via the GTM for All initiative. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the Friends of the Reserve organization provides invaluable support, from financial support to recruiting a constant stream of volunteers. And those volunteers do amazing work across the reserves programming. A thank you to the Friends group for hosting today's gathering. I checked out the program that we're going to be enjoying today and tomorrow, and it really reminded me about the diversity of research that reserves support. Today and tomorrow, you're going to hear about everything from water quality and habitat condition to managing invasive species to the impacts of climate change on archaeological sites. And the research that you're going to hear about has real world applications. You'll hear a presentation about a vulnerability assessment that was done of on-site wastewater treatment systems, also known as septic tanks in low-lying areas. And that work can really help us prioritize septic to sewer conversions. You'll also hear about how wild hogs are impacting salt marshes. This can help justify the need for management resources to control this invasive species. And you'll hear about how mangroves are moving into salt marshes as the climate warms. This is something that natural resource managers all across Florida and beyond are really concerned about and need to understand as they work to preserve diversity. So in closing, I just want to say a word of thanks to the Reserve for inviting me to join today, and a thank you to all of the researchers who are going to be sharing about their work. I really look forward to learning a lot today. Thanks, Caitlin.
Thank you so much, Heidi, for joining us this morning. It is always wonderful to have our partners as part of State of the Reserve, both the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration with Heidi and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection with Dr. Rains.